Welcome to This Explainer. Today, we're exploring the architecture of a quiet regret. I want you to just settle in for a moment. Take a slow, deep breath and leave the noise of your day behind us. Imagine we're just sitting by a fire, looking back at the long, winding road of a life. How do we actually become who we are? Well, I can tell you this. It's almost never the way we think it happens. Section 1. A $50 lie. The first compromise. Our narrative begins with a young, really ambitious guy named David. Now, David believed he was a good, honest man, but one rainy afternoon, he really needed a commission to survive. So, he looked a customer right in the eye and he lied, just a little bit. The papers were signed and David earned exactly $50. $50. That was the price of his very first compromise. But you want to know the eerie part? Nothing happened. There were no sirens, no immediate consequences. There was no heavy guilt keeping him awake all night long, no lightning bolt from the sky. Actually, life rewarded him. The silence that followed was total. And that quiet? Well, that was the true beginning of his transformation. Years later, David would actually struggle to even remember that customer's name, but he would never forget that single decision. Because you see, the lie itself wasn't the tragedy. The person the lie began creating was. Most of us walk around operating under this illusion that our lives are shaped by massive, dramatic events. The big job, the marriage, the cross-country move. But that simply isn't true. Our lives are actually shaped by tiny, almost invisible decisions repeated thousands of times in the dark. Section 2. The practice of becoming. Training character. Think about it this way. Every single time you repeat an action, you are practicing something. A pianist becomes a pianist by practicing. A writer becomes a writer by practicing. Character works the exact same way. You become whatever you repeatedly train yourself to be. Imagine David looking into the mirror at each stage of his life. At 23, he thought he was just solving a temporary problem. But at 24, the next lie came just a little bit easier. At 25, easier still. By the time he hit 30, the constant repetition of half-truths made dishonesty feel perfectly natural. And it wasn't because David was an evil man. It was simply because he had practiced it. The human brain is just an astonishing biological machine. It physically adapts to repetition. In clinical psychology, there's this foundational principle: what fires together, wires together. Every repeated behavior literally strengthens a neural pathway in your brain. The first lie feels uncomfortable, the 10th feels easier, the 100th feels completely normal. It's the exact same clinical principle that creates unparalleled greatness, and, unfortunately, it's what creates devastating regret. Section 3. The sun's reflection. Habits follow home. Years passed by. David built a successful career, a family. From the outside looking in, his life was perfect. But those small compromises he kept justifying at work, they quietly followed him right into his living room. Little lies, excuses, broken promises. Until one evening, David's young son walked into the room, smiled up at him, and casually said, "Dad, tell Mom I'm asleep." David laughed. His son smiled back. But then, the moment hit David like a physical blow. He just froze, because he recognized that look on his son's face. He recognized the confidence, the total, unbothered ease of the deception. His son wasn't learning honesty. His son was learning from him. For the absolute first time in his life, David felt truly, deeply afraid. And he wasn't afraid of being caught in a lie. He wasn't afraid of losing his job. No. He was terrified of the quiet character drift he had just witnessed in his own blood. He was terrified of becoming someone he didn't respect. Section 4. Identity architecture. Drifting into regret. We don't ruin our lives overnight. We drift. Just one excuse, one choice at a time. The philosopher Aristotle is famous for observing that excellence is not an act, it is a habit. But what we so often fail to realize is that the exact same rule applies to weakness. Weakness is rarely a single catastrophic failure. Weakness is a pattern. It's a choice, repeated until it becomes your identity. And identity is incredibly dangerous because once we become something for long enough, our actions actually shape the way we see reality itself. The dishonest person truly begins to believe that everyone else lies. Life is always going to test us. A financial crisis, a profound loss, a massive failure. Most people mistakenly think pressure creates character. It doesn't. Pressure reveals it. When those inevitable storms hit, we don't just magically rise to our noble intentions. Think about it. A soldier doesn't rise to his intentions. He falls back on his training. And as human beings, we fall back heavily on the person we have practiced being. Section 5. The quiet regret. years later. Let's jump ahead years later. Imagine an older David, gray-haired, sitting entirely alone in an empty hospital waiting room. There's just the hum of a vending machine and the slow ticking of a clock. The silence gives him time to think. And for the first time in decades, he looks honestly at his own path. He thinks about every single excuse, every moment he chose what was easy instead of what was right. None of it seemed important at the time. Yet, those tiny decisions had built a man he wasn't really sure he admired. David's lonely reflection mirrors exactly what palliative care nurses hear in the absolute final stages of life. When people look back, they are remarkably clear. They do not regret failing to earn more money. They do not regret failing to spend more time online. And they certainly do not regret failing to impress strangers. Instead, what haunted them was this, the unlived version of themselves. They regretted fear. They regretted avoidance. Because in the end, the ultimate pain isn't failure. The greatest pain is wasted potential. It's meeting the person you could have become, the honest, courageous, fully realized version of yourself, and realizing, with heartbreaking clarity, that you never became them. Section 6. Meeting your future self. 10 years from now. I want you to imagine something for me. Imagine meeting the person your daily habits are creating. Exactly 10 years from right now. That future version of you walks into the room, they sit down across from you. They are the direct, undeniable result of every excuse you make today, every standard you tolerate, every action you practice. Ask yourself this question slowly. Would you respect him or her? If you saw the sum total of your current habits embodied in another human being sitting right in front of you, would you look at them with respect? Would you trust them? Is the person sitting across from you someone you could rely on when life gets unimaginably hard? Would you be proud to become them? Because the urgent, quiet truth we all have to face is this. You are actively training this future person right now. Today. This very moment. The question isn't whether you're changing. You are.
One day, you will meet the person your choices created. That meeting in the mirror is inevitable. You really cannot avoid it. But the message here isn't tragic. It is deeply hopeful. Because you still have time. You can start practicing a different identity today.
So I'll leave you with this. Who are you becoming?